Hey, Internet.
I got a fever, and the only prescription is more
Worldview Everlasting, your favorite YouTube addiction. It's gonna be on a little short end today because take a week off and this, how am I ever gonna get back on track? You know what I'm saying? So maybe a little less Greek and a little more action on this Tuesday, November 27th. And happy birthday, Laura, if you're watching. I didn't forget. So the appointed text for this week takes us into Series C, the next year. It's a new year as far as lectionary readings go. That is, as far as having an assigned set of biblical texts to keep you and your preachers from picking just any part of the Bible you want to listen to and trying to cover the whole swath of Christian teaching on an annual basis through these selected readings. We're moving into the Gospel of Luke, and we're jumping into not Luke chapter 1, as you might expect if you were reading it like a Western person, but instead thematically jumping into texts about the end of the world, which leads to the beginning of the Gospel in Jesus being born at Christmas. We're in the period of Advent, the period of waiting, the period of coming, because something is coming, the end of the world, the Messiah. Yes, and it happened in a manger, and it happened on a cross, and it's going to happen again on the clouds on the last day. We got two texts going on as potentials for Luke this week. One, in which Jesus is talking a lot like he has been in Mark the past few weeks about the destruction of the temple, which in Luke's gospel seems to be all he's really talking about, and yet it has this pattern or this image, this, dare I say it, typology even of the end of the world. We're not going to look at that one because, well, we've been doing that for a couple of weeks now. The alternative reading is the triumphal entry, where Jesus comes down off the Mount of Olivet from Bethany into Jerusalem upon this colt, the foal of a donkey, as the king, come to Zion, his people, to redeem them. Yeah? Well, that's an interesting text to start the year off, but then again, we did just have Christ the King Sunday, and then again, Advent is all about waiting for the coming king, so why not start off with a text that pretty much says, hey, look, he's already come once, and look what he came to do. Right on in majesty, right on in glorious pomp to die, yeah? Because that's what he did as the king. On this colt, this foal of a donkey, which is not, as many of the church fathers and even dear Luther tend to think, just a show of humility. You know, oh, I'm so humble. Everyone knows I'm not the be humble gospel, you know, gospel of the worst kind. But this is an image of actual, well, I guess if you weren't the king, it would be arrogance. By sitting on this colt approaching Jerusalem, he is proclaiming that like the Jewish kings, or I should say Israelite kings of old, he has no threats left. No one can harm him. He has no enemies. He is the returning, conquering king. The enemies of Zion, the enemies of Israel have been defeated on the field of battle, and now he comes with palm branches waving, proclaiming, heralding his victory, and that his throne is unsurpassed, that none can stand against him. This is how David would enter the kingdom, at least so the historians say, and so this is how Jesus enters the kingdom, so that there is not a single Jew there who doesn't know that this is a claim that he has come, that he's the fulfillment, that the Messiah is here, that the kingdom is about to be inaugurated once and for all, which is why it's so surprising that it isn't, so to speak, or that the crown he wears is not the crown anyone expects, but this crown of thorns, and why it's not surprising at all that it's at this point that the Pharisees and leaders of the Jews decide, yeah, no doubt, we've absolutely got to kill this guy. It's done. The whole world is going after him, and they think he's actually the king, and next thing you know, Rome is going to be knocking on the door saying, why you got a king that's not Caesar? Funny, by the end of that week, they're saying, we have no king but Caesar, to prove this point and get Pilate to put this man to death. Also wrapped up in this, and certainly should be the big hat tip that more is going on than just Jesus' humility, is the quoting of Psalm 118 in the middle of this text. Blessed is the coming one, the king, who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Part of a very much longer psalm, again Psalm 118, which is all about the return of a triumphal king from the field of battle where he has defeated his enemies on his way up to the Temple Mount to perform the sacrifices and thanksgivings and offerings which are required in the Levitical codes to show his faith and his knowledge that this is not something he has done, but that something which his God has done for him. Once again, look what happens. No longer are you binding the festal sacrifice up to the horns of the altar, but instead you're binding him to the trunk of a tree. No longer are you slitting his throat so that his blood flows out and is thrown on the altar, rather through piercings and a stab in the side died, his blood flows down to the earth as the final priestly atonement sacrifice for the redemption of the entire world. Hear what I'm saying? So there's a nice lot of play going on, a lot of directions you can go with as a preacher in this. I myself would be partial to that Psalm 118 route. There's some great language in there. All nations surrounded me. In the name of the Lord, I cut them off. They surrounded me on every side. In the name of the Lord, I cut them off. They surrounded me like bees. They went out like a fire among thorns. In the name of the Lord, I cut them off. Text about the defeat of an enemy, which for you, Christian, is text about Jesus' defeat of sin, death, and the devil on that cross when the nations were arrayed against him, when all his enemies were against him, and in the name of the Lord, he cut off all evil in his own flesh, bearing it to death with that victory. Did it look like a victory, did it? No. But it was. And so that even Jesus there could say, my God is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation, because he knew the sign of Jonah would be complete, and on the third day, even given unto death, he would rise again, vindicated. Justified, not in the sense that declared innocent, but actually vindicated, showing forth the innocence which he had earned, now spreads forth, and in fact justifies you, not by works. This justification which he earned justifies you by grace, free gift, yes, to be received by faith in that promise alone. Hear what I'm saying? And so Christ, the right hand of the Lord, does valiantly, defeating sin, death, and the devil for you. The right hand of the Lord exalts even you up to highest heaven in his own flesh and blood, which as a human now rules over all things with all authority in heaven and earth, for your sake, to bring you to be with him in innocence, righteousness, and blessedness forever. Yes, the right hand of the Lord does valiantly, by turning the other cheek to his Father's wrath for your sake. All the hosts of hell could not bid him come down off that cross, but for the joy set before him, he endured it for you, so that he can say, open to me the gates of righteousness, namely heaven itself ascending, that I may enter therein as the stone which the builders rejected, who has become the corner. Like I said, Psalm 118, holy moly will it preach. But back to Luke. So again, just in short, triumphal entry, Jesus, knowing what's going on, knowing he has to proclaim who he is, knowing the week that it is that he's gonna die, on his way down to where the Passover feast will be celebrated, having recently told a story about how the king is gonna come back and defeat his enemies, sends two of his disciples into a nearby town, little village, to get a donkey that's never been ridden on. And he says, if someone asks you, tell them, Kyrie, the Lord has need of it. Well, lo and behold, they go do this, and it works out just like they said. Some people ask, in fact, it says in the text, the lords of the beast ask, the lords of the colt ask, why are you doing this, taking this away? And they say, because the Lord of it, the colt, has need of it. Interesting little play. Who is really the Lord? Jesus is really the Lord. They bring it to him, they throw their coats on it, they throw their coats on the ground, and he begins to ride in with the whole multitude of his disciples. Now these are the believers. In Luke's gospel, disciples means not apostles, but believers. These are the believers. All of them have come with him because they think that this is it. Now the kingdom's about to start. He's going to go into Jerusalem, and during this Passover feast, going to sit down on the throne, and it's all going to happen. So they're singing, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And as other texts tell us, Hosanna, that is, save us right now. And knowing exactly what all of this means, some of the Pharisees who are there say, hey, teacher, will you please make these people shut up? Because if you're a true teacher, then you know that what they're saying is total blasphemy, because you are not the Messiah. There's no way you're the Messiah. So you know that they're just totally lying. So you need to tell them to be quiet, or else you are proving to us that you are a false teacher. We're going to have to do something about that. Teacher, rebuke your disciples, they say. I tell you, if they were silent, the rocks would start to cry out. That is to say, truth will out. Of course, then he draws near to the city and he begins to weep. Would that you have known the day of your visitation. I'll tell you what, right now for you, Christian, the day of your visitation is today, and is with this word preached. Christ has died for you. Christ has risen for you. That's why he entered triumphantly to Jerusalem. It's why he entered triumphantly into heaven, and that's why he's coming back triumphantly to raise the living and the dead. That means to justify you. And that's been your Not Quite Greek Tuesday, because, it's late in the afternoon and I gotta get moving. But we'll catch you guys Friday with some new stuff, and including updates on the Wee Ninja Clan and stuff, which has been going good, right? I just got it out of time. All right? Yeah. Rock on.
This episode of Worldview Everlasting is brought to you by the letter Awesome, the numbers Sweet Action, and Issues Etc. Talk radio for the thinking Christian. Issues etc.org.